I'm finding the derivative of the inverse function, which I'm gonna put as g prime of x. The function is f of x equals x cubed minus 5x squared plus 12x minus 5. First I have to find g prime of x. Oh, a equals 3.
So I'll take over from here. So g prime of a, we're letting g prime of a represent the derivative of the inverse function. Alright? So that must mean that g of x is the inverse of f of x.
Right.
That's the case.
Yeah.
Alright? So, how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, I need to know the formula. G prime of x, which you guys need to commit to memory,
right,
is equal to 1 over f prime of g of x. Sorry. Alright? So if I'm trying to find g prime of a, then I'm just plugging in a wherever I see an x. So that's g prime of a equals 1 over f prime of g of a. And as Jasmine said earlier, well, a is 3. So really I'm finding g prime of 3, which is equal to 1 over f prime of g of 3. Right? So now this is where we see that in order for me to go further, I have to first find g of 3. Well, what do I know? What do I know? I know that g is the inverse of f of x. So what I need to understand is that if that's the case, if there's a point on f of x, let's say f of x has a point x comma f of x, right? And I'm going to call that x value, let's call it, I don't know, let's call it s. And let's call that f of x, let's call that r. Then if f is the inverse of g, or g is the inverse of f, then I know that that point x, g of x, any point that's on x, f of x, would be the reverse. So the x value would be the r, and the y value, which is g of x, will be the s. So right now, what do I have? I have that I'm trying to find g of 3, so really that's 3 comma g of 3, right? That's like my r and my x. Well, if that's the case, remember what we said, we have to swap them. So the r in this case is 3, and the s in this case is g of 3. So what does that mean? When I'm finding g of 3, what I'm really doing is setting 3 equal to f of x. So that's the first step I need to do. In order to find g of a, that means I have to set a equal to f of x and solve for x. That's the first thing we need to do. Well, what was f of x? F of x was x to the third minus 5x squared plus 12x minus 5. So let's write that over. What I'm supposed to do with this information is set it equal to the a value to find the x value of that, which I know will be equal to g of 3. So a was 3, so 3 equals x to the third minus 5x squared plus 12x minus 5. Boom. So to solve for x, I need this is a cubic function, so I need to get everything on one side. So if I get rid of this 3, I'll subtract 3 from both sides, from algebra. I'll get 0 equals x to the third minus 5x squared plus 12x minus 8. Now I have this function, this cubic function that's equal to 0. When I get right here, I want to start trying to plug in numbers for x to try to see what would work. We always start off with all of the factors of my constant. That's the number that's at the end. So a factor of any constant is always going to be 1, so it's always good to start off with 1. Will 1 work? Well, let's see. If I plug in 1 for x, 1 to the third power minus 5 times 1 squared plus 12 times 1 minus 8. If I simplify that, and we still check it, right? 1 cubed is 1 minus 5 times 1 squared is 5 plus 12 minus 8. Well, that gives me 0. Well, 1 minus 5 is a negative 4. Negative 4 plus 12 is 8. And 8 minus 8 minus 8, I'm sorry, is 0. So I'm getting 0 on both sides. So 1 has to be the x value, or one of the x values in this case, that it gives me a true statement in this formula. So what does that mean? Well, that means that g of 3 has to equal 1. Knowing that information, let's go back to this. I now know what g of 3 is equal to. So g prime of 3 is equal to 1 over f prime of g of 3, which was 1, so f prime of 1. Now, what do I have to do? I have to now find f prime of 1. Well, in order for me to do that, I need to find f prime of x first. Well, this is f of x. So f prime of x is the derivative of f of x. So f prime of x has to equal, using the power rule, 3x squared minus 10x plus 12. So that's f prime of x. Now finding f prime of 1 just means to plug in 1 wherever I have x. So f prime of 1 is 3 times 1 squared times minus 10 times 1 plus 12. 1 squared times 3 is 3. Minus, of course, 10 times 1 is 10, so that's 3 minus 10. That's a negative 7. Plus 12 would be 5. So f prime of 1 is 5. So look, g prime of 3 is equal to 1 over f prime of 1. Well, I know that f prime of 1 is 5, so that's equal to 1 over 5. So we just proved that g prime of 3 equals 1 over 5.